You're listening to Cars and Coffee, your local home for IndyCar, Formula One, and sports car racing news.
Here on 91.3 WHJE.
And now, here's your host, Nathan Ward. Hello, and welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. We did St. Pete pre-race last week, and we are back to a normal show this week. We don't really have very many headlines to jump in with today, other than the Australian Grand Prix was a kind of a mess. It's kind of a glimpse into old Formula One where you have cars finishing literal laps apart from each other. There are a lot of kinks to work out with these new car regulations. I will save that for another segment for another show that I will put a little bit more thought into. But before we get started here with the actual substance in the news here, make sure to go follow our Instagram at carsandcoffee_WHJE and follow the station on Instagram, WHJE_radio. You can find live show replays on YouTube, every live show I've ever done, youtube.com/@TWIRvids, and listen live anywhere around the world at WHJE.com. Let's get straight into this double race review for IndyCar. The races lined up such where we had St. Pete last Sunday, and then we had the Good Ranchers 250 at Phoenix Raceway last night. Finally, 2 consecutive IndyCar races to start the year. At St. Pete, our pole sitter was Scott McLaughlin, and as normal, as usual on road courses, Alex Palou took home the W in a first-time companion weekend with the NASCAR Truck Series. The season started much like it did last year. Unfortunately, rookie Mick Schumacher's day ended early when he was caught up in an opening lap incident with Stingray Robb and Santino Ferrucci. The biggest star of the day, in my opinion, for St. Pete has to be Dennis Hauger, who dropped back from his third-place start, but stuck around in the top 10 all day and finished a solid 10th on his debut race. But dominating the field as usual was the number 10 DHL Honda of Alex Palou, maintaining championship form to start the season. Can he do it for the rest of the year? Foreshadowing. Moving on to Phoenix. This race had a lot of anticipation, a lot of hype, because this is a companion weekend with NASCAR. Fox had been hyping it up as the Desert Double, which is good. I'm glad that Fox is actually advertising the two together, and it worked. The crowd was really good, especially considering that Phoenix, in the modern era of IndyCar, post-split, is known for having absolutely awful crowd turnout. I don't have a number at the moment, but judging from fans on Twitter that were taking pictures of the crowd, it looked probably about 80% there. That's a pretty good turnout. I imagine a lot of them stuck around for the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race, because that race was pretty packed too. A little bit less exciting than the IndyCar race, but still interesting nonetheless. The Good Ranchers 250 took a little bit more time to get going. David Malukas led the field from pole, his first career pole position. There were 2 yellows in the opening 30 laps, and both of them had some really interesting implications on social media and just around the IndyCar sphere in general. The first yellow was actually kind of funny. It was Dennis Hauger losing it off of turn 2 and going down the entire backstretch backwards. And then he does a J-turn at the end of the backstretch at the entrance to turn 3 and just keeps going. He ended up leading laps, his first career laps led in an IndyCar later in the day. But the second yellow was a collision between Alex Palou and Rinus VeeKay that put Palou out of the race on lap 20, I think. I'm estimating, because the timing and scoring broke on the broadcast, and we didn't have a functioning ticker to show positions until lap 30. But Palou made contact with VeeKay. It's really hard to place blame for an incident like this, mainly because of VeeKay was going for a gap on the top lane that I don't think was going to be there by the time he could go for the move. Palou was coming up, VeeKay was coming up. They both hit the wall, and Palou nosed into the wall off of VeeKay's front wing. I think that's a racing incident. Palou said later that he did not see VeeKay's car there. So it may just be a racing incident where VeeKay just happened to be in Palou's blind spot and Palou didn't see him. It didn't seem like a dirty move to me. Alex Palou does not seem like the driver who would do that move, especially to himself, and I don't think VeeKay I don't think VK is the type of driver that would take someone out like that. The implications of this, however, meant that at least for one race, the field was finally free of the impending doom that was Alex Palou. And we had a pretty good, we made a pretty good race out of it. But the most insane stat of the weekend, in my opinion, is that leaving Phoenix, Joseph Newgarden is the leader of the IndyCar Championship. We'll get to that later. This is the first time since July of 2024 that Alex Palou has not led the IndyCar Points Championship, which is absolutely, I think it was like 620 days, I think, since the last time Palou was not leading the championship. But with Palou out, that led to a few other contenders. You had Christian Rasmussen, Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin. You had David Malukas, the three Penske cars, Christian Rasmussen, his teammate Alexander Rossi. Graham Rahal was hanging out in the top 10. Very good run for RLL, by the way, who have they've very notoriously struggled on ovals within the past few years. They had a fantastic qualifying. Louis Foster was down in 16th, but sharing the second row were the other two cars of Graham and Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher qualifying fourth on his oval debut is pretty good. He dropped to 22nd after a slow stop, but he still got reps in, and he was still very, very fast. But Graham was able to get out with the top 10. Unfortunately, Louis Foster hit the wall, bringing out the third and final yellow of the day. But Christian Rasmussen, on a savvy pit call, took the lead, but his car was really, really loose. He kept sliding up in the turns in the final stint of the race. His tires were really going, and he likes a very loose race car anyway. But he kept sliding further and further up the track in every turn until he finally hit the wall at the exit of turn 2. Came back around the next lap, did it again. Kyle Kirkwood passed him for the lead with 10 to go after he hit the wall. And then it looked like Kirkwood was going to win, but hard charging from third before Rasmussen's incident was Joseph Newgarden, who made up like 5 seconds in 3 laps and passed Kirkwood for the win with 6 to go and never looked back. Kirkwood was no match for Newgarden, took the lead with 6 to go, taking the lead of the championship by, I believe, 5 points. Palou has been knocked back down to 4th in the championship, but next week, we have another IndyCar race. Yes, 3 consecutive races to start the year. IndyCar heads to the streets of Arlington, Texas for the Java House Grand Prix of Arlington on Sunday, March 15th at 12:30. Once again, I will be doing pre-race coverage at our normal 11:30 a.m. start time. A little bit more substantial pre-race coverage than last week. Last week was a test of the format, and I know what I could do better. So next week, is going to be very fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to see how the Arlington track behaves, how Indy Next fares at the track, because this is the first time that Indy Next has had its 2 opening races within the same month in like years. It's almost always been like St. Pete, 2-month gap, Barber, and finally they have races that are within the same month to start the year. So that'll be good for the next drivers, that they won't be out of their seat for 2 months. But I'm excited for Arlington. Tune in here at 11:30 a.m. next Sunday, for pre-race. And then the race will be at 12:30 on Fox. That's it for IndyCar. When we come back, we're going to talk about a turnkey NASCAR Cup car that you can own for just $60,000 in this week's RaceCarsForYou.com featured listing. But before that, we're going to cut to a quick song break. You're listening to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. Here's Hardick Tonight by the Eagles. Don't go away. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this, that means you're listening to a replay of today's show. I just want to say thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss another episode of Cars and Coffee, along with highlights from your favorite motorsport series. If you're listening on the WHJE website, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just click the button below. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get back to the show. We now return to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. Welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. This week's Race Cars For You featured listing is honestly an absolute gem that I found earlier this week on Twitter. It is a 2000s Mark Martin road course spec NASCAR Cup car. This is a Roush Racing Ford Taurus that was campaigned by Mark Martin at some point from 2000 to 2002 and is currently completely turnkey and ready to go with the correct Roush Yates Ford engine, the correct 4-speed gearbox. The car has Brembo road course brakes. This is completely set up for $60,000. You have a ready-to-go road course NASCAR race car. This is honestly a slam dunk deal for a historic racer. It's a beautiful car. I love Gen 4 NASCAR Cup cars. My mouse broke. It's got 2 sets of sticker Hoosier tires. So it's got some spare tires. It's got 55 gallons of 110 race fuel that comes with it. The car's in incredible shape. It's a period correct time capsule. It's even got the correct skew. The body's skewed like it normally would be. It is essentially straight off the track from 2000. This car is absolutely gorgeous. I know there's one YouTuber that I watch named Slapshoes that would absolutely pay $60,000 for this. Biggest Mark Martin fan I have ever seen on the internet. He actually did a wonderful video on why Mark Martin is the greatest protagonist in NASCAR history. It's like an hour and 10 minutes. Great watch. But this car is just in pristine condition. The guy's accepting trades of equal value. This is up for sale by Land and Best on Race Cars For You. It's in Tennessee, but he's accepting $60,000 or trades of equal value. So this is if you have equipment you want to get rid of, and you want to go historic racing for those gentlemen drivers that love historic racing, this is an amazing deal. I'm going to do probably a separate short form video on this car because I want to get this out here because it is probably the best deal I have ever found on Race Cars For You for a fully functioning turnkey race car that high level competition. You can just get right in and start it for $60,000. That's crazy. There are F1 show cars here on Race Cars For You that are $250,000. They don't even run. I'm taking the Cup car any day because at least it runs and it's 4 times as cheap. But this is an absolutely fantastic deal, and I really hope someone picks it up and goes historic racing with it because I believe HSR now has a stock car series, and this would be a perfect home for this number 6 Viagra-sponsored Ford Taurus, driven by Mark Martin in the early 2000s. It's still got the Winston Cup stickers on it. It is. The wrap, I don't believe, has been changed. So this is really a straight from the track car. And honestly, I don't think you could get it for a better deal. That is today's Race Cars For You featured listing here on Cars and Coffee. When we come back, our main bulk of today's show is talking about how the ongoing and evolving conflict in the Middle East will affect this year's motorsport schedules for both Formula One and the FIA World Endurance Championship. We will talk about that when we come back here on Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. Here's February 7 by the Avett Brothers. Don't go away. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this, that means you're listening to a replay of today's show. I just want to say thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe to the This Week in Racing YouTube channel so you never miss another episode of Cars and Coffee, along with highlights from your favorite motorsport series. If you're listening on the WHJE website, go to youtube.com/@TWIRvids. If you're listening to this on YouTube, just click the button below. Thank you so much for listening. Now, let's get back to the show. We now return to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. Welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. Our final segment of the day revolves around the ongoing situation in the Middle East and how it will affect the this year's motorsport schedules. As you most likely know, the United States and Israel launched a military campaign against Iran last weekend, and with more and more motorsport events taking place in the Middle East every year, this could seriously affect the calendars of multiple championships. Many nations surrounding Iran have been the victims of retaliatory strikes alongside Israel, mainly Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey. Almost all of these countries host a world championship auto race of some kind throughout the year. So let's take a look at how each series is handling this conflict. Formula One has already begun to weigh the option of canceling its two early season races in Bahrain and Jeddah on the Saudi Red Sea coast. So Bahrain is actually an issue because it is a Persian Gulf nation. It is on the side of the Arabian Peninsula that Iran is on. Jeddah, maybe not as much. It's on the other side of Saudi Arabia. It's on the Red Sea coast, the side that faces Egypt. But Jeddah, in and of itself, has had issues in the past with military conflict going on during a Formula One race weekend. There was a Saudi Aramco oil refinery that's just a bit down the coast from Jeddah Corniche Circuit, where they have where they host the event. It was hit by a missile a few years ago. It was like during a free practice session that they had to cancel because an oil refinery down the road from the circuit got hit by a ballistic missile. Jeddah has had issues before. That weekend did go ahead because nothing else happened. But with Saudi Arabia being the subject of intense retaliatory strikes, the races in Bahrain and Jeddah may not go ahead. These races are due as a back-to-back pairing on April 12th and 19th, respectively, as the 4th and 5th rounds of the F1 Championship. F1 has also announced that these events will not be replaced if they end up being canceled, leaving 22 races on the 2026 calendar. Racer.com has been informed that the logistics and commercial considerations involved in a new race location in the original dates make such a move unlikely, if not completely impossible. And there is an acceptance that the two Middle Eastern rounds are likely to be canceled, barring a dramatic improvement in the situation in the coming 10 days. There is also really no leeway in the schedule to include rounds later in the year without encroaching on the mandatory summer shutdown, where all the facilities for all the teams are shut down for 3 weeks so their workers can go on vacation and be with their families and all that. Although the expectation is for the two races to drop off the calendar and the championship to become a 22-race season, a final decision will not be required until the point that freight would need to be dispatched in the gap between the Chinese and Japanese Grand Prix in about 3 weeks. Because when they leave Japan, they're going to almost instantly head to Bahrain and then Saudi Arabia after that. There will not be a decision until then, probably, if not before. And if it happens before, that probably means there's been a serious further de-escalation. But it's a very fluid situation, and we're probably just going to have to wait and see what is going on. Moving on to the World Endurance Championship, which outright canceled the season-opening Qatar 1812 kilometers less than 72 hours after the initial strikes and the assassination of Iran's supreme leader. The accompanying prologue test has been shifted to Imola, the initial second round of the season, which will become the new curtain raiser on April 19th. The FIA and ACO do hope to reschedule the Qatar race later in the season, probably near the championship's other visit to the Middle East, the 8 Hours of Bahrain in November. if the conflict does drag on into the year, the Bahrain WEC event, as well as the Formula One events in Qatar and the UAE, could also be in jeopardy, as well as the Asian Le Mans Series, which has 2 of its 3 weekends in the UAE. That could be under threat if this conflict continues further, which, considering what has happened already, I don't believe it will. But obviously, this is a very fluid situation, and while you can speculate a little bit and make educated guesses that, yeah, F1's probably not going to Saudi Arabia when it's in the middle of a war zone, it's too early to know. Because you look at the Australian Grand Prix was actually in jeopardy earlier this week, because the way a lot of teams get to Australia is they go from London, either at Heathrow or any of the other 4 airports in London. They go from London to Dubai and then to Melbourne. They do a 2-hop flight with a layover in Dubai. That, since the Dubai airport is constantly being hit by drones, they can't do that. Obviously, that race has since occurred, and everyone was able to get there on time. But now the issue arises where I don't know, where are they going next? There is a race next week, and they have to. The engineers, the teams, the drivers, all the freight has to get out of Melbourne and get to China by next week. That's a big task, but it's possible, and they don't have to go through the Middle East to get to China, but from China they go to Japan, and then Japan, that's the cutoff where they need to figure out whether the races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are going to be canceled or not. Either this conflict very quickly resolves itself, or these races will not be held and will not be rescheduled. But it's something that I will continue to cover through these next couple weeks as more information will come out. But next week, we once again are providing IndyCar pre-race coverage for the Java House Grand Prix of Arlington. Tune in at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time here on 91.3 WHJE for the pre-race show, and then switch to Fox or IndyCar Radio at 12:30 for the race. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. You've been listening to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great week. Here is Kashmir by Led Zeppelin.